So it's a new year and it's a new gear video, and it's a while since I've done a video about what I take with me and what I've got in my backpack. It's been a couple of years. I think the last one that I did was on the stuff that I take with me when I'm camping and backpacking, which is a different set of gear because then I'm specifically trying to go as light as possible. And I think since then my gear's evolved quite a bit. I think like most photographers, your gear is constantly evolving as you find new ways of working and new things that work. And also, I don't really have one set of gear that works for everything. I find that on different trips to different places, like things like going to the Arctic is very different to going to the mountains. And I take different gear with me for different trips, sometimes different lenses, things like that. So what I want to do in this video is look at pretty much all the gear that I've got, what goes with me for which particular trips and why I use it. So the first thing that I've got is this is my camera backpack. This is the f-stop Anya backpack. It's about 37 liters. It's not a huge backpack. It's one of the smaller backpacks that they make because I tend to prefer smaller backpacks if possible, because I take with me the least amount of gear possible. What I like about f-stop backpacks is that they have, first of all, they have an internal camera unit, so you can put different size camera units in depending on how much different gear that you want to take. And these come out, so I've got various different ones, a small one, a medium one, and a large one for when I want to take everything. And generally when I'm traveling, this folds up flat in my suitcase, and I just take with me the ICU as my carry-on luggage. But there's a lot of things I like about the backpack. They're really well designed in terms of their pockets, the way that everything's arranged. They're very, very sturdy, very, very resilient, comfortable to carry with quite a large amount of weight in them. They've got waist straps, waistbands, because most of the weight that you're carrying should be on your hips. You don't really want all the weight of the backpack on your shoulder. You're going to get tired really quickly. You should be carrying the weight through here. And I've used a couple of f-stop backpacks over the years, and I've just found them to be really useful. All right, so let's have a look at the gear that I'm carrying in here. Now inside, this is the large Pro ICU. This is the biggest ICU that I've got, and it's pretty much got all of my gear in it. I would never take all of this with me on a trip. It's just too much, it's too heavy, and I just don't need this amount of gear. But when I'm at home, pretty much everything lives inside here anyway, and I just take what I need and put it in whichever ICU works best for the particular trip. So let's start with the camera gear. So this is the GFX 100S with the 100 to 200mm lens, the GF 20 to 35 ultra wide angle zoom for the GFX system. So this is my medium format system. There's a telephoto zoom here and a wide angle zoom here. I'm not going to go into loads of detail on the lenses and the camera because I've reviewed the camera and I've talked about the lenses in other videos. I tend to shoot most of the time either ultra wide angle landscapes or with a telephoto. So these are the most commonly used lenses. I've also got a mid-range zoom for the GFX system, a 35 to 70, but this is the two lenses that go with me on most trips. I don't take these everywhere. If I'm going somewhere where there's going to be a lot of hiking, a lot of climbing, this gear system is just a little bit too heavy, so this tends to stay at home. So when weight is more of an issue, then I will just take the APS-C, the smaller camera system. So for that, I've got the X-T5 here and also the X-S10, which is the camera that I'm recording this video on. I really love these cameras. I've been using the Fuji APS-C system for years, 7 or 8 years now. I've done videos on them before, which you can find, and I've reviewed both of these cameras and the lenses. So again, I'm not going to go into great detail about these particular cameras and why I choose these cameras. But basically, in terms of the lenses, there's the 1024 will go with me on most trips, and also a telephoto. So the telephoto that I use is a 55 to 200. Here I've got the 16 to 80, which is a mid-range zoom. This kind of sometimes goes with me if I take the GFX system with a wide angle and the telephoto. Then this will be the second camera with the mid-range zoom, which kind of covers the area that this doesn't cover. And then also in here, I've got this Viltrox 13mm f1.4. Now this is a very specialist lens. I only really take this with me on places where I'm going to be shooting either Astro or the Aurora. So for winter workshops like Lofoten next month, or I'm going to be in Iceland and Greenland in March, then I'll take this lens with me for the Aurora, because you really want to have a wide focal range, 13mm, and you want to have a very fast aperture. This is f1.4 because you want to get the light in as quickly as possible, so you don't have to use a high ISO. It's the same when you're shooting Astro, when you're shooting stars, and I tend to do that in Namibia. So again, this lens goes with me with the X-T5 for that trip. And that's pretty much it in terms of cameras and lenses. Always a telephoto, always a wide angle, an ultra wide angle zoom, and then I've got mid ranges. So it's rare that I will have more than 3 lenses with me on a trip. 3 lenses tends to cover everything, the wide angle, the mid and the tele. But generally, yeah, there's never a time when all of these cameras are going to go with me. Now, one thing that you'll notice that every single one of my cameras has an L bracket. These are an incredibly useful tool. An L bracket, if you don't know, is a bracket which fits along the bottom and the side of the camera to attach to the tripod. It does add a little bit of bulk and weight to the camera, but what this means is that you can attach this directly into the tripod. It basically doubles as a quick release plate on your tripod, but because it's an L bracket, then you can flip it around and shoot in vertical. Now this stops you from having to tilt the camera over sideways, which makes it harder to compose and also makes the camera a lot less unstable on the tripod. It's very easy for the tripod to blow over when it's all weighted to one side. So L brackets are absolutely essential. Mine are all third-party ones that I get off places like Amazon or eBay. None of them cost very much. This is one for the X-T5. I've got one here for the GFX, and there's one on the X-S10. They're really not very expensive. You pay about $25 for them. What you have to do is make sure the one that you find is specifically made for your camera, because it has to fit snugly around the bottom and you need to have access to all of the ports and doors at the side. Now, one of the things I have on all my cameras is one of these Optech camera straps. I've got a much bigger, heavy-duty one on the GFX and these smaller ones on the X system cameras. Now, I'm not really a big fan of camera straps, particularly not neck straps, because I never wear a camera on my neck. And I think they get in the way. If you've got them on the tripod and it's windy, they're going to be blowing around, getting in the way, getting in front of the lens and making the camera less stable. So I do like straps that I can just clip off, and these clip off really very easily. And if I need to be carrying the camera in my hand, or if I'm doing aerials from a helicopter or something like that, and I want to make sure that the camera's not going to be dropped, then all I really need is just a wrist strap like this. So you'll notice that on all of the camera lenses, I've got a case filter lens cap. This is because I'm using case filtered magnetic filter holders. Now, these are really, really nice. I used to use graduated filters, but I think they've become a lot less. You don't really need them now. I find it so easy to bracket and then blend images in Lightroom. So I only tend to take circular filters with me. One of the things about circular filters, though, is if you're working in cold weather, you've got gloves, is that they're very easy to kind of get stuck and then you can't screw them off again, which is very important if you're using things like a 10-stop filter or a 6-stop filter, because you want to do a long exposure. You've got to do your composition, screw the filter on, readjust composition. So it's really nice to have magnetic filters that just clip on and clip off. So I've got one of these on every one of my lenses. So this is the step-up ring for the magnetic filter, and then the filter sizes are actually for my widest lens, which is the 10 to 20, the 20 to 35, which is 82mm. So I keep the filters in underneath here. They fit really small. One of the things that I really like about the case filters is how small they pack down. This is 4 filters here with a cap on each end, so I don't even need to put them in a case. These fit in your pocket really easily. They're just so convenient to use. They're color coded, so you can see straight away which one's which. So if you want to drop a filter on, then you just basically, there you go, and then it comes off super easily. This is really nice. It's a really nice system. You can get 2 filters on quite easily without vignetting. I think I've not really checked with the 20 to 35 because this is a 15 equivalent. It's very wide. I've not checked with 2 filters on that, but if it does vignette, it's only going to vignette a little bit. So when it comes to which filters to take with you, I found that I only really need 4 filters. I've got a circular polarizer, which I use mostly with the telephoto lens to remove haze from the sky or just to pop out detail. Then I've got 3 neutral density filters. I've got a 3-stop neutral density filter, which is really good if you want kind of half-second or quarter-second exposures. If you're shooting coastal photography down by the next to the ocean, and you want to just put a little bit of blur in the waves, but not too much. Then I've got a 6-stop, which that's useful for doing the same thing. Again, if you want half-second exposures, but if it's much brighter, but also in the blue hour, a 6-stop filter is going to get you 30-second or 1-minute exposures, which will just really flatten out water, or if you want to blur the clouds. And then finally, I've got a 10-stop filter, which is really nice if you want to do 2-minute exposures or really, really long exposures, just to get that completely sort of surreal, ethereal effect. And that's pretty much it. As I say, it's just the 4 filters here, and that's everything that I take regarding filters. The system is really nice. I'm super impressed with the quality. I've not seen any real color casts when I'm using any of the darker filters. They're super convenient to use. One of the things that I like is that they have a new system. I'm not sure what it's called. I think it's the Case Revolution. And for that, the magnetic ring actually fits. You can't really see it, but it fits inside of the lens ring here. So it's tiny. It kind of screws inside here. So anything filters sticking on there has a really low profile, and it also means you can screw other filters in on the top. Now, I don't really need to do that, but if you want to screw in a variandy or something like that, then you can do that, or you can use the original lens caps. You don't have to use a magnetic lens cap. Okay, so the next thing in the bag is the drone for aerial photography. I've got here a DJI Air 2S, which is a drone I really like using. I've used the Mavic 3, and I think that's a great drone. But this, in terms of its small size and weight, it's really, really nice. And size and weight has become even more important to me if I'm taking the GFX system, the medium format system, because that's quite big and heavy. So having a smaller drone is quite useful. And also in here, we've got the DJI RC remote controller. Now, this is one of those controllers. It has a built-in screen, so you don't need to use your phone with it, which is, I find that very useful, because if I don't have to worry about my phone dying, battery dying, this has excellent battery life. And it's just useful, I think, to not have to rely on your phone or worry about your phone battery life when you want to fly the drone. I've also got this f-stop drone pouch, which I use just for carrying the drone and the controller and the batteries. And I tend to use this when I'm not using the really large f-stop ICU, which fits everything in. I'm just taking one of the smaller ICUs just with the camera gear, and the drone sits in this. Now, the back of the backpack has got lots of pockets here. I tend to not use these very much, because if you put heavy things in the pockets, it's going to really bulge out the back because you've already got a lot of camera gear in here. So I tend to keep things that are quite flat in here. There's not really much. I think here there's just my cable release. Cable releases are useful, I think, particularly if you're shooting coastal photography and you're trying to shoot exposures with the waves crashing up the beach, then you really need to time it. You can't use a 2-second timer on the camera. You need to be kind of clicking the shutter exactly when you need it clicked. So that's when I use the remote for. And then I think in here, I've just got a folding Leatherman pocket knife. This is great. I mostly use it for the screwdriver, which is great for just tightening things like tripod legs or removing the L brackets on the camera. It's also got a set of pliers in it, which is it's just an all-round super useful tool, and I think everyone should always have something like this in the backpack wherever they go. Now, moving into the top of the bag, on the top pocket here, this is a kind of easy access pocket in the lid where I can get stuff really quickly. So in here, I've basically got my sunglasses, if in case I need them. They don't go with me on every trip, and a DJI Pocket 2. This is what I use for if I'm recording a vlog, if I want to record while I'm on the go and out in the field. Now, what I really like about this is not only is it super small and lightweight, it weighs just like a couple of 100 grams, it's just very quick and easy to set up shooting. So you just pull it out your bag, turn it on, and you can be shooting within seconds. So it's very spontaneous, very easy to use, and just gets out of your way and really takes up literally no space at all in the backpack. So then also in the top here, there's a separated pocket where I keep spare batteries. So the batteries for the X-T5 and the GFX are the same. So I've usually just got 2 batteries with me in the field. That's all I need. Plus the 2 in the camera. I've never found that I need any more than that. And then spare cards for both cameras and also for the drone, mini SD cards. For the drone, most of my cards are either 32 gigs or 64 gigs, and I tend to try to get fast cards because I do record video, record time lapses and things like that. Then when we go into the top of the bag, now because I've got the large ICU in here, there's not a huge amount of space in the top of the bag, but there is still enough space to get things like a down jacket. I've got my beanie and gloves, and there's also space down the front for a shell jacket for if it rains. Now, when it comes to gloves, gloves are really important. A lot of the places that I go, it gets really cold, and finding gloves that work for photography is quite challenging. I use the Heat Company gloves. These are nice. They've got these touch pads which make it easier to use things like the drone or your phone when you're using. These are basically just glove liners. They keep your hands really warm, but they're not waterproof, so you have to be very careful about getting them wet. If I'm going somewhere much colder and I need something that's waterproof, then I take with me their shells, which are these big mittens, which you can fit over the top of the liners, but these just keep your hands super warm. You can open the mitten there, so you've got access to the fingers and to the thumb. They're really waterproof, really warm, and these are pretty much what I'll be using through all of my winter workshops. Now on the back of the lid here, there's another pocket. This is where I keep kind of spare stuff. So there's a first aid kit here that I use. This has just got basics in it, like sticking plasters, things to strap up a cut or a wound. There's some iodine in there, so some antiseptic cream, and then spare batteries for a head torch, because in the front here I've got this little pocket which I keep a head torch. Now any landscape photographer needs to have a head torch when you're heading out for sunrise. You need to be able to see where you're going. Likewise, when you're heading back after sunset, head torch is absolutely essential. And because I might not use it from trip to trip, it's hard to keep track of the batteries, so I always have multiple sets of spare batteries with me for the torch. So just the last few bits and pieces now are there side pockets here on the side of the backpack. Now in this one, I've just got all of my cleaning cloths and things like that. So I've got different sets of cloths. Like I have big cloths like this, which I use if I want to dry down moisture or dirt off the camera. So this would never touch the lens. Then I've got these kind of Zeiss wet wipes, which are really good for cleaning lenses and screens. And then I've also got some other kind of thin tissue, lens tissues there, just to keep just to dry and clean, get muck off the front of lenses. And then in the pocket on the other side, I've got a couple of these. Now these are bags to put over the camera to keep it dry. So if it's raining, if there's a little bit of rain in the air, then you just drop this over the camera, the lens goes through here, and this will keep rain off the camera, will keep it dry. The cameras are all weather sealed. But if you're standing out for a long period of time, just getting a really wet camera it's not a good idea anyway. So I do tend to use these if I'm in some really bad weather. Then I think the last thing is the pockets on the front of the backpack. So there's this big pocket that goes all the way down the front here. Now this is, I basically shove anything that's wet in here. So if I've been out and I've got my gloves wet, or if I've got my shell wet, then that just gets shoved into this pocket in the front to keep it away from the rest of the gear. I also keep a water bottle in here. Obviously, usually it's got water in it. This is a flexible bottle. It fits flat into this backpack. I don't like hydration bladders. I don't really like using the tubes or things like that. I think the whole thing is quite inconvenient for me. And I also don't want to have the bladder in the same compartment of the backpack as the rest of my camera gear. So what I like about this is that this pocket on the front is completely separate and sealed from the rest of the backpack. I have had water bottles leak in the past when I've not closed them properly, and they don't leave this pocket. The water all stays in here. There's actually a drainage hole at the bottom of the backpack, so any leaking water will run out and it won't get into the rest of your backpack and damage your camera gear. So the final things are the tripods that I use. Now I've got two different tripods, and it really depends, like the camera gear, on what kind of trip it is. This is my favorite tripod. It is a Pro Media Gear. I forget the exact model. I'll put it in the video when I edit the video together. And I've got an Arca Swiss P0 inverted ball head on the top with a really right stuff clamp. So it's a kind of a mixture of lots of different brands. The tripod itself, I really like this. It's a carbon fiber tripod. It reaches really high, so it comes up to here. I don't have to bend down when I'm using it. It's really sturdy, really strong. It's been with me in some incredibly bad weather, covered in thick ice. It's been blasted by sand in Namibia. Everything on this is metal. It doesn't have any plastic on the outside. And it's just, I find that even after using it so many times, it's still really smooth. It has spikes in the bottom, so you can just screw out the bottom and flip the feet around and use spikes. It's not super light. I wouldn't call this a travel tripod, but it is very sturdy. And I tend to use this tripod when I'm going to places again where I'm not doing really, really long hikes. I can carry this for a couple of kilometers and for a couple of hours, but I wouldn't want to be carrying it on steep climbs up mountains where I'm walking for 5 or 6 hours at a time. For that, I use my other tripod. The ball head here, the Arca Swiss ball head, is really nice. This is an inverted ball head. So what that means is basically the ball head is sort of upside down from most ball heads, which means that if the tripod isn't level, you can still level the ball head like that, which means that then the pano head on the top just rotates, and that will be rotating flat. Whereas if you don't have an inverted ball head, getting the top of this flat, you basically have to have the platform of the tripod level. Not really explaining it very well, but I've just found this to be really useful. I also like the way that it feels. It's very intuitive in the hand. I'm not twisting around with lots of knobs and levers. This thing works. You just tighten this at the top. Just takes a very small twist to unloosen it and a very small twist to tighten it. And then, yeah, a clip, a really right stuff clamp. I find these just really good. They're very tight, very easy to open when you're wearing gloves. It's the same with this ball head. It's very easy to operate when you're wearing thick, heavy gloves. And it's just, this is the system that I really like. But as I said, it's not super light. So if I want to go some light, then I'll use a travel tripod. This is the Jitso GT1545 travel tripod. I like it. It's great. It doesn't reach, I think it's full at its full. Without the center ball head, it comes up to about here, which is a little bit low. You have to use the center ball head just to get it up to here, it's not super convenient. I like to have a tripod that comes up high and not having to be bending down. But it is very light. It weighs very little. So if I'm having to do really, really long hikes with big ascents and stuff like that, then this will tend to go with me. I don't like the Jitso ball head that came with it. It came with a specific ball head. I don't remember the exact name of it, but I had all kinds of problems with it. I don't think it was well designed. The panorama screw on the side literally just kept falling off, which made the whole ball head just spin around like a weather vane. So I've switched this out for a really right stuff. This is a BH35, I think, which is really nice. It will take the weight of something like the GFX with the long lens with no problem whatsoever. It's super tough. There you go. And yeah, this will do a job. It's a good tripod, but it's not as sturdy or as high reaching as my other tripod, which I will tend to prefer if I can. This is very light though. Okay, so I think that pretty much covers everything. So that's it for this video. I hope it's been useful and hope it's been interesting. If you've got any questions at all, drop me a comment down below or send me an email and I will get back to you. Now, if you enjoy my photography, if you enjoy the way that I talk about photography, if you've seen my other work, then I'd love to have you join me on a workshop this year or next year. I'll be heading to places like Lofoten, to Iceland, to Greenland, to Namibia, to Patagonia. So if you're interested in joining me on one of these trips, you can find full information on the workshop page on my website, or just drop me a line and I'll get back to you, and I'd love to see you on a trip. So as ever, thanks for all the support of the channel and good luck with all your photography. I'll see you next time. Take care. Bye.